Well, good morning, guys. It's wonderful to be with you again for another one of our morning prayer times together. It is the 16th of September, and we're really coming towards the end of Mark's Gospel, all the way through lockdown and all the way through being able to do things virtually and having morning prayer virtually. We've worked our way through the Gospel of Mark, taking just little passage by little passage and really getting into it and really starting to think about what these passages mean for us and what God is trying to say to us through these passages. And we've worked all our way through, and now here we are, almost at the end of it all. So what we've been doing over recent times is kind of just really focusing on the Bible passage, giving all the time over to that. Now, at other times we have songs, at other times there's kind of prayer time, at other times there's stillness. But with regards to now and the kind of part of the story that we're in, it's absolutely right that we kind of finish this whole thing by focusing on the story of Jesus, his death, what happens next, and then eventually the resurrection. So on Friday is when it all comes to a finish. We'll have the final part of Mark's Gospel on Friday, the 18th of September. But today we're still in Mark, and it's just what's happened is Jesus has just been crucified, and Jesus has now died. The build up to the story has been that Jesus, with his followers, has gained a kind of a big reputation. There are big crowds coming to see him. He arrives in Jerusalem, this absolute heart of the Jewish faith, the people of God. That's their center. And Jesus spends a lot of time in the temple, which is the absolute center of the Jewish faith, the absolute center of the people of God. And he's teaching, but he's causing a lot of trouble as well. He's questioning the religious authorities. He's questioning those who tell people how they can be in relationship with God and what they need to do. He's questioning them, he's undermining them, and so they've had enough of it. They want rid of him because he's really attacking their status. And so Jesus is falsely accused of things. He's arrested, he's betrayed by Judas. He's brought before the Jewish High Council called the Sanhedrin. And there they can't find anything to really kind of accuse him of which sticks. But then he is asked the question, "Are you the Son of God?" To which Jesus replies, "I am." Then Jesus is taken from there, brought before Pilate. Pilate is the Roman leader in Jerusalem. He's the one who holds the kind of ultimate authority and power. And there again, Jesus is accused of things, and Pilate can't see any of these accusations standing up. And he says to Jesus, "Why don't you speak out? Why don't you defend yourself? Are you who they say you are? Are you the Son of God?" And Jesus says, "Yeah, I am." And then Pilate, wanting to keep the crowds happy and wants to keep everybody happy, even though he knows it's the wrong thing to do, and even though he knows that Jesus is innocent of anything, really, he says, "No, no, no. Okay, if you want him crucified, that's fine. I'll wash my hands of it. It's over to you." So Jesus is then led. He's beaten, he's mocked, he's spat upon, he's made fun of, and then eventually he is crucified. He is nailed hands and feet to a cross. The cross is held up, and then Jesus dies on that cross. And as he's dying, and in that moment, he cries out, "Why have you forsaken me?" Jesus really experiences the abandonment of loss and the sense of, why has God let this happen? I think a feeling a lot of us can echo with. So Jesus has died. So what now? What happens now? And that's where we pick up the story. So this is Mark chapter 15, verse 42, the burial of Jesus. It was preparation day. That's the day before the Sabbath. So as evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Now just pause. This guy, Joseph of Arimathea, he's a prominent member of the council. The council was the Sanhedrin. That was the Jewish authority that Jesus was brought before, which was the ones that handed him over to Pilate to be crucified. Joseph of Arimathea sits on that council. So something has happened to him. He has been convicted of something. He has been convinced that Jesus actually was somebody who he should take a lot more notice of, to the point that he was a member of the council who basically sentenced Jesus to death. And now that same person, this Joseph of Arimathea, is going to try and get Jesus' body. There's something happening to Joseph of Arimathea. So he goes to Pilate and asks for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that Jesus was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked if Jesus had already died, and when he learned from the centurion that it was so, he gave Jesus' body to Joseph. So Joseph brought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid. So here we see, well, the reality of what happens. There isn't any celebration here. There isn't any kind of expectation either. Jesus has talked about the idea that he might rise again, but people haven't quite understood it. And there's no celebration here. And if you look at the people who were around, none of them are the disciples, his closest followers. They're not there at all. They aren't the ones trying to take Jesus' body down. They aren't the one trying to give him a kind of honoured burial. They're not the ones with him as he goes into the tomb. They're not the ones there making sure that everything's all right. Isn't that extraordinary that in this moment they aren't with him? Even now he's died, they don't come forward. It's this guy Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the council who ultimately sentenced Jesus to death, who is the one who gives Jesus a kind of proper burial, an honoured burial. He's the one who sorts that out, not Jesus' friends or disciples. I think that tells us where they were. They were absolutely desolate. This was the end of the story. Everything that Jesus had taught, everything that Jesus had said, everything that happened meant nothing, because here it is, it's finished. Jesus is dead. They have nothing in them anymore. They're still scattered and they're absolutely desolate. And you know what? I get that. I really understand how they feel, those disciples. That moment where you think everything's going to be all right and it isn't. And that thing where you genuinely have no hope left. There is no good out of this. There is no hope. It's finished. It's done. That's where the disciples were. And so it falls to other people to sort Jesus' body out. I find it kind of extraordinary, really, but also I completely understand where they're coming from. They were utterly hopeless, terrified that they would be next, that if they dared to stand up and say, yes, we're his followers, then they would be killed. They would be crucified, so they hide, and they stay in hiding. And I reckon they felt immense guilt that they weren't there with Jesus, that they hadn't even been there to take him down from the cross and give him a proper burial. I wonder how they felt when they heard that it was a member of the Jewish council, these people who had sentenced Jesus to death, who had been kind of enemies with Jesus, that it was one of them who had actually taken Jesus down. I wonder how they felt that it had been one of them that had given him a proper burial, not his closest friends and followers. They must have been beating themselves up completely about it. But that's what happens when hope is gone. We lose any sense of purpose, any sense of reason, I guess. What's the point? What's the point? It's hopeless. What's the point in doing any of this? It's finished. It's pointless. I used to play football a lot. I still play now when I can, and I really enjoy it. But when I was younger, I had a real competitive edge. Sometimes it got me into quite a lot of trouble. Of probably the vicar with the most red cards, I guess you could say. But what would happen when I was much, much younger is if we weren't winning, well, what was the point? What was the point? If we're not winning, I'll just give up. I'll just walk around. I'm not going to try. I'll try if we're winning. I'm trying if it looks like there's hope. But if it looks like there's no hope, well, what's the point? Where's the point in that? And the thing is, even now you see kind of footballers who behave in this way. They're fantastic when everything's going their way, but as soon as things don't go their way, they kind of stop trying. They don't run as much and so on. And actually what you see there is the character of a person. You see the character. Now, I'm not that person anymore. That was when I was much younger. But there's that sense of the greatest kind of sports people you see are the ones who give it absolutely everything they've got, in spite of the fact that it almost looks completely hopeless. There's football matches I know that have been played in the Premier League where teams have been like 4 or 5-0 down at half time, and you kind of go, what's the point in even coming out for the second half? But then the greatest footballers, their attitude is, the second half, we don't let any more goals in. Yes, we're going to lose 5-0, but we're not going to lose 6 or 7-0. We don't let any more goals in. We do our best to retain some sense of respect and pride in what we're doing. But actually, when there's no hope, it can so often be the place where we get to where we go, there is no point in anything. There's no point in this. That's where the disciples found themselves. For 3 years, they journeyed with Christ, thinking something extraordinary was going to happen. This is going to be amazing. Oh my word, what's going to happen? Oh, he's dead. Ah. And if we admit who we are, then we might be dead as well. Well, there's no hope here. It's finished. There's a lot going on here. From the reaction of the disciples, which is to stay away and hide, from the response of this Joseph of Arimathea, which is to give a proper burial to the person that he was part of committing to death. There's something in there about forgiveness and the way that hearts can be changed even in the most unlikely of circumstances and to the most unlikely of people. But then we also have those two women, Mary and Mary. The disciples are nowhere to be seen, but here are the women, checking on Christ, journeying with him even through to his burial place. They are brave enough to be there where the disciples aren't. And you know what happens? They're the ones who get to see the remarkable thing which the disciples now think is hopeless. I do find it very telling that in these moments, these absolutely critical kind of core moments of the Christian faith, who is it that we find journeying to the bitter end with Christ? It is the women. Now, we need to understand this. In these days, this was a massively patriarchal society. You could say that it still is to a lot of extent, but it was a massively patriarchal society. Women did not get to do things like this. They did not get any place of prominence. They were not seen as important. They were certainly not equal with men. They were given no important tasks particularly. They were very much, in the hierarchy of things, they were. And yet, in the Gospels, here we see there in the center of the most important part of the entire gospel story, it is the women who have one of the absolute central roles of being with Christ right until his burial, journeying with him. And as we're going to see, there when the most extraordinary thing happens. That's an important thing to recognize. I wonder where you find yourself in this story. Are you the disciples who are kind of hopeless and what's the point in any of this? Are you Joseph of Arimathea, whose heart has been changed, even though your attitude towards Christ and Christianity and all of it was like, what a load of rubbish that is. I can't believe that. But something's happening. Something's changing. Are you one of the women who you're going to journey with this to the bitter end? Sometimes it might feel difficult, but you're not letting Jesus go yet. You're going to be there until the bitter end. On Friday, the story, comes to its glorious completion. We see how the story, I was going to say how the story ends, but actually it's almost how the story begins. Let's say the Lord's Prayer, and then we'll go about our day. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So I'll be here on Friday morning again. This will be available on Wednesday, this one. The one on Friday will be available from 10:15, as they all are. So you can catch it when you like. So on Friday, it all comes to an end. We finish Mark's gospel, but like I said before, it's more like the beginning of what happens next. But after journeying all the way through, we reach the glorious pinnacle of the gospel story. You guys stay safe, look after each other. I'll see you Friday, and until then, may God be with you. Take care.